All right, so I'm with Teri here from Renegade. I'm super excited to meet with you guys. This has been just, like we were just talking, I love conventions, and I love meeting with people. And Stack Up has definitely given me a reason to meet with people and get the word out about the organization and stuff. And as you were just saying, you have run into us before then.
I have. So before coming to Renegade, I worked with Geek and Sundry. We know the great stuff Stack Up does. I worked on an article featuring some of the incredible people who helped contribute to this country and make it wonderful and safe. So honoring those people, but helping also recognize that gaming helps bring people together when they come home too. This
weekend, especially with everything going on in Columbus this weekend, games are a great way to kind of set aside differences. You get together, you play some games together. It doesn't matter what your ideals or anything. You sit down and play some games, and you can kind of relax and bond over that. It's a good way to set aside some differences.
We can connect as people, as opposed to the idea of being divided. We can just find moments to recognize each other for who we are.
Yes, that's a good way to put it. Yes, you guys have a great library of games. So I have a few questions for you. Been on deployment, and troops from any branch. You go overseas, and whether you're in a combat zone or you're just sitting on a big base or anything, it can be boring. It can be very boring. In my experience, we had one PlayStation for our entire company. If you were lucky to be there at that base, right? So with your library of games, and you can do maybe like a top 3, but if you're thinking about deployment, you need something that's durable, maybe something that doesn't have a whole lot of tokens that can get lost. One of the things Stack Up does is we do send supply crates, which is like care packages. So if we were to send one of your games, or maybe like I said, top 3, to people deploy, or even if they're sometimes we'll send games to people recovering like in a hospital, that have been wounded, and they need something to do to occupy their time and their mind. What games do you think would be good for that?
Well, there's a few games out there. I think that when it comes to like small, compact, knowing you've got to carry it as well. Blood of an Englishman is a great game for that. It is a game it's basically a deck of cards that you're playing as a 2-player game. You're playing either Jack, or you're playing as the giant. You can play as a 2-player game, and it's also a really exciting game to watch. So if you're hanging out, you can watch it, you can see it plays really quickly, and so you can set it up, play it again, change folks. It's really wonderful for that. Fox in the Forest is another similar game. It doesn't have a lot of, but it's nice and compact. So you can bring it with you wherever you go. It's a 2-player trick-taking game that works really well for when you're on deployment. And again, you can see the tension, the push-pull of that game.
Trick-taking, you mean kind of like Hearts or Spades or something like that?
Like Hearts or Spades.
That style of game is very popular. And we always joke because the Mortarmen, we always joke about how they just sit in the back and play spades. So games like that, trick-taking games kind of like that, or like Rummy or Euchre or something like that, they're very popular. Especially because you go on deployment, people will take decks of cards with them because they're small, they're easy to pack, and then a lot of times they'll leave them behind for the next group. It's kind of a way we just kind of take care of each other all the way through. So a lot of these games, like I said, games that don't have too many tokens and are durable. Would be good to send, I think, to people that to some of the guys that are still overseas. So
absolutely. I mean, I know a lot of guys who would also take games with miniatures in them. They can paint the miniatures. So even if you're by yourself, you can enjoy that. We just started releasing miniatures for our very, very popular game, Clank. So we have a line of 4 character miniatures you can that are compatible with Clank in our upcoming Clank Legacy game. So those little things are also, I think, nice, durable. You can pack them away. They're small. And because our miniatures aren't multi-piece, you're ready to paint if that's something you want to do. And they're one piece, so you don't have to assemble them. There are no Philly parts, and they're pretty, I won't say indestructible, but they're very resilient.
They're durable,
Yes.
So that actually is one thing I have found. I got out of the military in 2011. Since then, I've been working with the VA. They have helped me out through a lot, but gaming has definitely been one of those things that I've turned to kind of occupy time and keep my my head in a good space, you
Yes.
know. And I found about a year ago that I'm not much of an artist, but I can paint minis decent enough. So I've really been enjoying finding miniature games here that have miniatures that you can paint. I've only really worked on a few Dungeons and Dragons minis and then Star Wars Legion, which is a war game,
Yes,
you know. But
yes.
other than that, I haven't really run into others that I've picked up, so I've been looking out for them here, so that's good to know. This is just a little more for fun, right? So
Sure.
you guys have tons of games. You
Yes.
guys have a lot of great games. So if you had to pick the top 3, you're like, you only have 3 of the games that you can show people, and I know that's a loaded question, that's
so
difficult.
hard.
But
So I'm speaking for myself.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So before I get started, before I worked for Renegade Games, I had to move across the country. I moved literally across the continent from
Wow,
one
okay.
side to the other,
Yeah.
and I had to pick which board games were going to come with me in that move. Gravwell, which was one of our first games as Renegade Games, was one of the games that came with me. It came across the continent with me. I love that game. For me, I think that it's simple enough that I can play it with my family, but it's really interesting and feels really challenging.
Yeah.
And it feels like my choices really matter in that game. And
Yeah.
so I love that game.
player agency is a huge
agency
thing.
is
Yeah,
huge.
yeah.
I come from a miniature wargaming background. So before I
Great,
worked
yes.
for Renegade Games, I used to, I was a YouTuber with Geek and Sundry. I
Yeah.
painted miniatures.
Okay.
I made videos on how to paint miniatures. So games with miniatures are one that I have a soft spot for.
Yeah.
So the new upper management pack that is new has been one of the most delightful projects,
Great,
painting
yeah.
projects I've had on my personal time. That's really exciting because I really like Penny Arcade's Acquisitions Incorporated.
Yeah.
And so having that and being able to paint those character miniatures has been really fun and something I will treasure, and it's something that I can do by myself. I don't have to have people to play with to enjoy those particular minis. And I still love Clank, so it's compatible with Clank,
Yes.
which is really
Yeah.
popular, really fun.
Yeah.
And so that is probably up there on my list for me. Picking a third is really hard. I have to shout out Lanterns because
Yes.
it's so
Okay.
beautiful. It is
Yes.
so compelling.
Yeah.
It's a tile laying game. But I think that even the popularity of Lanterns Dice, which is sold out here at the show, I'm really
Yes,
excited
yeah,
about that.
yeah.
Lanterns, you have to pay homage to where it came from.
Yes,
Lanterns
yeah.
Dice is very hot, but Lanterns is still just as good, really compelling, really delightful. A game that still, years later, hits my table constantly. It's a bit of an older game, but it means it's easier to find and still just as good and just as
Yeah.
fresh and really enjoyable.
So Lanterns is definitely a crowd favorite, as
is.
we're seeing here. What do you think are maybe a couple high points, like crowd favorites? Maybe they can be staples of the company that you guys have had for a while, or new, or maybe upcoming. What do you think would be some crowd favorites?
So some of the most popular games that we have are Clank. Absolutely, it's a game that a lot of people love. It's won a lot of awards. It's incredible. It's a really fun, different kind of approach to exploring a dungeon and getting treasure because it's competitive, but it's not head to head. It's a race, so it's really delightful. Very popular with fans. I would definitely say that the Raiders of the North Sea line, and then its new kind of iteration with Architects of the West Kingdom. So the North Sea line of games, and then the West Kingdom game is very popular. If you really like worker placement and beautiful art, that game is incredible, and because it's so popular, it's really well known, and it's a new way to show people how to play these games with meeples and bricks and resource management, all that fun stuff. And the third, it's hard to say, but of course Lanterns is absolutely a favorite. It's a classic, it's great, and
For sure.
it's probably one of the reasons why Lanterns Dice has sold as well as it has here.
Yeah, for sure. So I also, one thing that I've noticed, and I don't know, I'm fairly new to branching out in the tabletop world. Like I said, video games are vastly popular, but tabletop gaming isn't going anywhere anytime soon. And one thing that I've noticed is there are a lot of single player or solo play games or games that feature solo play. And I'm noticing more and more, and I actually got the rundown on one over here. I can't remember what was the name of that.
Proving Grounds.
Proving Grounds,
Proving
right.
Grounds.
And I actually really enjoyed, it looks like it's a blast to play. Like I said, with the stacks, we want to bring people together, but also something you can take back and kind of pour over on yourself. Are there other games that feature solo play that you guys have?
So Proving Grounds is the first of what we're calling our Solo Hero series. These are games that are specifically designed for solo play, and so you get the best of like tabletop games and the components and the feeling, that tangible component feeling, while also being able to do things like having a narrative story arc, which you don't necessarily get in multiplayer tabletop games. Like the story arc isn't, in board gaming at least, isn't present the way that it is when you're playing a solo game. So it's a really new experience. This is the first of its kind, but we do have a number of other really delightful games that do have solo elements, one of which is our new release here, Bubble Tea. It's actually a really challenging game. It's one of the most adorable games we have.
And it comes with a little mixer.
A really mixer. It's a $20 game.
Yeah.
But what you have in it is probably one of the more challenging spatial element games, because that comes with these transparent cards that you have to lay ingredients down.
Yeah.
These ingredients can't be outside the cup, but you can cover them up, and you've got to match your bubble tea creation to a drink order.
Yes.
And it's a real-time game, so you can play it with other people, play it real-time, or you can play it on your own, play it as a time game, or play it by yourself. My daughter plays it by herself.
Yes.
It's really delightful, and it's really tangible, and it's a good spatial skill game that's really fun.
Yeah, and you had we actually got the rundown earlier today as well from the Dragon Tea game.
Yeah,
and that one seems really good, and it looks like it would be good for children as well.
Tea Dragon Society card game. It's nominated here at Origins for the Origins Awards as one of the nominees for Family Game. So it's a beautiful game, really light deck building game. So if you're trying to connect with children, it's a great way to have that connection. And so you everything is played open hand. So the cards that are in your hand are actually laid out on the table in front of you, and you build your deck one card at a time. You either take an action by building up your hand, or you spend your hand and buy a card out of the marketplace. It's a very straightforward deck builder. At the end, you score points based on the value of the cards in your deck, but having that structure, I find having structures for games in general helps people connect without having to feel like they have to have these big conversations, which makes it easier to connect with children. So you can share an experience rather than feeling like you have to find those moments. Those moments are made for you at the table.
In closing, we've talked about, especially with the events here with the Pride Weekend in Columbus, and then talking about veterans, and then also the way you can connect with family games and stuff. Gaming means a lot to a lot of people, and again, with veterans and those from Stack Up, we know that gaming can help you out of dark places, and it can also be a way to connect with each other. If you could just share a little more on what gaming has meant to you personally. I know that's another loaded question. If there's anything else you could add to kind of those few points that we made already.
So gaming for me is about so many things. Gaming for me first is an investment in myself and self-care. When I got into miniature gaming and painting miniatures, when I paint miniatures, I can be in that moment with that model, and the world falls away. I don't do yoga, I don't meditate, but I paint miniatures, and having games that I can paint and engage with like that, those are the times that I give myself permission for self-care. So gaming facilitates that. Gaming is also, for me, it was the way that I found community. And so that meant a lot to me. So gaming for me means investment in self. It means investment in your relationships with others and in your community, and it also means fun. And so I think those are it's why I am such a big proponent of games. It's why I love them, because I think that when we invest in ourselves and our relationships with others, and we can do that in a fun way, it's a wonderful thing to be able to have in your life.
I always kind of like to close with that question because, you know, with there are things coming out, they just called, there's a gaming disorder, and gaming, it can be a double-edged sword, you know, and that's something we talk about with the stacks. You know, you come back, you try to reintegrate into society, and it's easy to just shut people out and play your own games, but our goal is to bring people together to play those games. Veterans and the civilian supporters and families, bring them together to play those games together on a semi-regular basis so we can provide that community and everything. And also we like to show that gaming has, it not only is fun and you need that time to relax, but it also can help in so many ways. But anyways, thank you, Teri. Thank you so much for meeting with us. I wish you the best of luck for the rest of the weekend.
Thank you.
You're almost there. It's over tomorrow. But you guys have been doing great. So thank you again so much for meeting with me.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thanks.
Yeah.